Taking a short intermission break from my trip to England, this here is Nuremberg. The city rose to prominence during the Middle Ages, firstly because it was as central in Europe as you can get, and secondly due to the Holy Roman Empire. Here is a map of their borders during the height of their power. As I zoom in, you can see exactly which city lies in the middle. Except that you can't. The city is really tiny on this map. I'll just draw an arrow to where Nuremberg actually is. Pretty central, ain't it? Being in such a central place, you must project your power somehow, and here it is, Eurenberg Castle. Built on top of a sandstone ridge, it served not only as an imposing fortification, but as an imperial residence as well. You see, the Holy Roman Empire did not have what we would call a capital. It just had several major imperial cities, Nuremberg being one of them, and it was quite liked by the emperor, becoming one of the most frequent sites of the imperial diet. To many people's disappointment, it did not mean that the emperor had to cut off his venison and wine supply due to famine or the fact that he became a bit pudgy. The imperial diet was the deliberative body of the Holy Roman Empire. Think of it as a gathering of electors, princes, cities, and the emperor himself to negotiate or discuss imperial matters. Due to the number of diets held here, it became sort of an unofficial capital of the empire. One of these diets produced the Golden Bull of 1356, which to many people's disappointment, it doesn't mean the fact they started building a statue of a bull out of gold. The Golden Bull actually referred to the golden seal used on the decree. That decree, headed by Emperor Charles IV, fixed for a period of more than 400 years important aspects of the constitutional structure of the empire, including establishing a majority vote on electing new emperors. It is important to mention that it was finalized on December 25, 1356 in Metz. Talk about a Christmas gift. A succession of wars in the 14th, 15th, and 16th century gradually reduced the influence the city once had. It will take up until the Industrial Revolution and the commissioning and opening of the first German railway, the Bavarian Ludwigsbahn, from Nürnberg to nearby Fürth in 1835 for the city to become significant again. There is one more chapter of history that I have to go through, but I'll keep that for last. For now, let's enjoy the splendor of this majestic main station, Nuremberg Hauptbahnhof. Yeah, that's how you make an entrance to the city. Construction finished in 1906, and the size of it is not just for show. Eurenberg Hauptbahnhof is one of the largest train stations in the world, having no less than 25 separate tracks. Not as fascinating as the one in Antwerp, but still pretty close. And while we are on the subject of mass transportation, I would also like to talk about the Nürnberg U-Bahn, or subway. All three lines converge at Hauptbahnhof and Plehrer. I'm taking the footage now at Plehrer, but I want you to notice on the U1 line the fact that the train has a driver. While the U2 and U3 lines do not. Yes, they are fully independent train systems. These lines in the middle of the track allow the system to know where a train is, providing a safe and fast driverless operation. A similar system is implemented on the Docklands Light Railway in London. I'll get to that another time. The beauty of such system, as you've seen on that DLR video, is that some trains do not have a driver's seat, allowing you access to film through the front window. And if you are thinking, "Oi, aren't you filming too close to that train?" Well, the camera was placed on a tripod, I was a safe distance away with a remote control, and also behind a safety shield. Take safety seriously when you are filming trains. Back on the surface level, crossing the street from the main station leads you to the Frauentor and the old city walls. Inside the walls you find a nice medieval village with craft shops. And right after it is Clarissenplatz, where the old city walls meet the new museum, which is used for art exhibitions. Next up is the Mauthalle, an imposing structure when you consider that it was built at the turn of the 16th century. Actually, most of the buildings you see here have been rebuilt in the aftermath of the Second World War. Most of Nuremberg was wiped out in January 1945. But thanks to associations like Altstadtfreunde Nürnberg, some of the medieval buildings were restored, one of which was Lorenzkirche. A fantastic Gothic church completed in 1477, the front facade of the church was made with plentiful details to signify the wealth of Nuremberg during that time period. It is one of the two major Protestant churches in Nuremberg. and home to Nuremberg city's dean, the other one being Sebalduskirche. Unfortunately, I messed up the video on this part, so here's a picture of it instead. The river Pegnitz passes through Nuremberg, creating this little Venice lookalike of a scene. And as we make our way to the Hauptmarkt, we find ourselves in the middle of a Lutheran brass instrument gathering. A sea of people, all armed with brass instruments, rehearsing for a national event in front of the Nürnberger Rathaus and the Frauenkirche, one of the oldest churches in Nuremberg. Here in the Hauptmarkt, you will also find the Schöner Brunnen, definitely one of the most beautiful fountains I have seen so far. Legends say that it was supposed to adorn the top of the Frauenkirche, but they realized after completing it that they had no way of lifting it. Now, remember when I said we have one more chapter of history to cover? I guess it is time.
Meine Arbeitsmänner. Deutschland, die Heil! Heil!
Those who don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it. That is why I'm touching this subject, for all of you to learn and be aware. This is Zeppelinfeld in Nuremberg, home to the world-infamous Nuremberg rallies, a place where the National Socialist German Workers' Party, headed by the nastiest piece of work known to mankind, Adolf Hitler, projected their power. You might know them as Nazis, a regime of such unspeakable cruelty. They started the Second World War and murdered millions of innocent men, women, and children. Nuremberg was chosen as the political capital of this so-called Third Empire, due to its central location in Germany and the connections it had with the Holy Roman Empire, more specifically the Imperial Diets. And that building over there was supposed to be the heart of this so-called empire, the Kongresshalle. A central stage for a dictator to unleash his oppressive diets, surrounded by a sea of fanatical followers. The Kongresshalle never got finished due to the outbreak of the Second World War, and it would never get to be finished due to the Nazis losing the Second World War. It now stands as a relic of a failed party state, and as a warning of what can happen when unspeakable evil deceives its way into the hearts of the citizens. This city was the symbolic birthplace of Nazism. It will also be its symbolic death, with the trials of Nuremberg. Held after the war in the relatively undamaged Palace of Justice, members of the Nazi Party would be tried and sentenced here for their oppressive regime and their brutal crimes during the war. The justice served here was imperfect. Many members would flee before they could be caught. Others would end themselves before facing it. Due to the Cold War and the shifting political climate, many would end up being pardoned. But as new evidence of their crimes surfaced and public opinion shifted, some would be sent back to trial, a process which continues to this very day. I think that was enough gloom and doom for one city. Here is a video of a squirrel I filmed. And for the last part, remember when I said in some of the U-Bahn trains you can film out the front window? We're gonna go on a short ride to Hauptbahnhof. Until next time.
Nächster Halt, Hauptbahnhof. Umsteigemöglichkeit zur U1, zur Straßenbahn sowie zur Regional-, Fern- und S-Bahn.
Next stop, main railway station. Change here for Underground Line 1 for tramway and train service.
Hauptbahnhof.
Jetzt